welcome back to the Festival of DAM. I'll hand you over to your conference chair, David Lipsey. David, over to you.
Thanks so much. And speaking of very complex handoffs here, many times over the years when I had the opportunity to be in New York City, I always treasured the time to meet with Paul Nicholson at Showtime and gain ever-growing insight into the complexity of operations and creative operations and digital assets that he helped sit at the helm of at Showtime. We're delighted, Paul, to have your leadership here at Henry Stewart, and I'll turn the panel management over to you and to your guests. Thank you so much for being here today.
So my name is Paul Nicholson. I'm formerly from Showtime Networks. I was the Senior Vice President of Production and Technology there for many, many years, a couple of decades actually, until very recently. And now I'm excited for what's next for me. But what's immediately next for me is this incredible panel that we have today for you. We've gotten this group together only a couple of times now in sort of preparation for our session here right now, and I have to tell you the conversation's been engaging. It's been really interesting to hear all of the different perspectives. So I'm just going to jump right in and get started so that you all can get the benefit of the same thing that I've been able to hear for these last couple of meetings that we've had. So we're going to cover a lot of ground today. We're going to talk about metadata best practices. We're going to talk about automation. Of course, we're going to talk about AI because you've got to talk about AI. And then we're going to really dig into some collaborative workflows that everyone here is partaking in and designing. So first, I'd just love to start by kind of having you all introduce yourselves. We're going to start with Fabiana, but Fabiana, if you could, and the rest of you could, sort of introduce yourself, talk a little bit about your current responsibilities around DAM and metadata, include a little bit of statistical information, if you could, about like asset volume, who your customer is, and then if anything's sort of unique about your current sort of DAM situation, we'd love for you to share that with the audience. So Fabiana, I'll send it to you.
Thank you, Paul. Nice to see you all. So I am at British Airways, based in London. So it's evening time for me, but I'm very glad to be here, part of this event. But my last coffee of the day was a long time ago, so I'm going to keep the conversation going for everybody. So I am new at British Airways. I have been there for 5 months, and so is the DAM we have, and the vision of having a digital transformation in the DAM management, DAM governance. So we believe we have about 10,000 legacy content that we created, being videos, images, illustrations, logos, and I am part of a marketing team and brand and marketing team. So we have a little bit of everything that probably everybody has. But in the past, the British BA.com drove the DAM management, and now we're taking ownership of that. And this is started about a year ago. So I'm in the team to help drive that further and put the vision in place. I think we have about 10,000 assets that we want to migrate to the new system. But this is it's just an estimate. It's not really a count down to detail. The team I am part of, which is part of the marketing team, is a creative content team. So we have videographers, photographers, and now we are advocating for the brand, the art direction throughout the content creators that BA has. So it's not just my team create content, there is some pockets around. So digital transformation is in the pipeline. There is a lot to develop, to bringing in. I'm so excited. I'm so pleased to have got this gig. Is blank canvas. So I'm really looking forward for this journey. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Patrick, let's go to you now.
Certainly. Hello, everybody, and thank you for attending. My name is Patrick Aubrey, and I'm a senior solutions engineer at Smartsheet with an emphasis and focus kind of on the content pieces. So brand folder, content automation, and templating, and some of our workflow capabilities. My role is primarily to interact with and learn as much as I can about users who would like to use the brand folder platform, the brand folder DAM, and then we fit our solution set to essentially their needs. Brandfolder as a company manages a lot of different content and clients. We have 8 million connected users as of last quarter. And in Brandfolder platform itself, we're handling 2.3 million monthly downloads, including 13,000 separate instances of Brandfolder with about a 50% international user base. So Brandfolder itself is a pretty well distributed DAM within the space itself. Got a lot of interesting new topics coming out and ideas, especially around AI and metadata. So I'm really excited for this opportunity to chat with some of my industry peers, hear how they're doing this today, and share kind of how we think the Brandfolder side about metadata, content, and making lives as easy as possible. So that's what the day's for, right?
That's great. Thanks, Patrick. Angela, turning it over to you.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm based in Rahway, New Jersey for Merck. If you see me like fidgeting around, it's because I forgot my chargers. I'm like IMing people in my office, like, hey, can you bring down the charger? So sorry about that if it's distracting at all. But anyway, I'm the co-lead, one of the co-leads for our asset management tool, which is also our MLR tool. And I'm going to spell that out. That's medical, legal, and regulatory review. As you can imagine, a lot of our marketing materials are subject to a lot of regulations. So this our platform that we use not only is our like content repository, this is also the space where our workflows are contained, all of the business rules per each market. Everything starts and finishes there, and then further our our system integrates to and has like 50 integrations to other systems. It's really robust. There's a lot going on, and I sit in a content capability space, so we're always looking at ways of maximizing our tool to what it is that the markets are asking for. I work a lot, I lead our governance team, so it's a lot of decision making over who gets what and why, a lot of that kind of rationale, and a lot of meetings, a lot of Jira work. I feel like we all live in Jira. And for what it's worth, I'm a librarian by trade. I've been at the company for a few years now, and I started at animal health, different kinds of regulations. And before that, I worked in a research library doing a bit of knowledge management and embedded librarianship. So weird background, but here I am.
Wow, interesting. I have a few questions I'm going to come back to you with on that stuff. Santiago, let's go to you.
Absolutely. I'm Santiago Gonzalez. I manage operations for post-production here at Wayfair. In addition to that, and more to the purpose of this call today, I lead our creative tooling and manage all of our creative digital asset management system and kind of like our build out of our tech stack as we look at moving forward with both Wayfair and all of our smaller specialty retail brands. Obviously, Wayfair is a global multi-billion-dollar company with teams both in the US and the EU. So during the pandemic, we were all kind of forced in the question of like, hey, how are we sharing information and like how are we having shared dictionaries? Question that we didn't really have to ask too much before that, just because like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So for the past 3 years, my life has very much been damn focused and figuring out how to find efficiencies to really make us our most profitable selves.
Excellent, excellent. Great. Well, that sets the tone. Clearly, we have some experts in the room and people that have all different kinds of challenges and coming at this from a bunch of different angles. So let's just dig in. Angela, I'm going to jump right back to you on something you said sort of at the end with the first question. We'll start here. But so you said you sit on the governance team. Tell me a little bit about what that team looks like. Whose job is it to maintain the metadata governance, and what does that team sort of look like?
Yeah, well, I like to think that governance is about documentation, and that's my inner librarian saying it shouldn't point back to a group of people. We're going back to a document, let's say, that is our guidance of how we make decisions. So when it comes to like adding a field and metadata like that, there's some considerations that go into it. And the first question that we find ourselves asking is, well, how do we apply this to other markets? What are the implications there? And does this field have any other kinds of dependencies? Is it a showstopper? How do we apply it? How do we introduce it to other markets? So there's a lot of questions that I think come with just adding a field. We can't just do it willy-nilly. There's questions, but ultimately the team itself, to answer your question, is made up of specialists who really understand our system. We have specialists in the MLR space, that medical, legal, and regulatory space. Our asset management team is represented, and then we also go back to our IT team, who are the people who are not only developing, but also like configuration experts, and can really, sometimes it's, we're just adding a field for a particular market, and other times it's, wait, this field speaks to other systems in how well does it speak to the systems? What does it depend on? What other fields does it speak to? And answering questions like that. So sometimes it's easy and sometimes it's not, but ultimately this team, as we meet regularly, we go back to that kind of documentation that serves as our guide. It's our decision tree. And that actually, for what it's worth, that document has to be updated. And that's part of why I was brought on from Animal Health, is to make sweeping changes to the way that we weigh those decisions.
Yes, excellent. Santiago, so at Wayfair, we talked last week about this, that there's so much content, right, coming in from so many external places. So how is governance handled for you, and how do you guys maintain proper,
Yeah, I mean, what Angela said about fields having either one purpose or needing to be a little bit more strict with multiple purposes could not speak more true. In our DAM, we currently don't even have everything we need in it right now, but we're already over 2.7 million assets. When you think about that across not just video, but our on-site imagery, our app imagery, our supplier imagery, which is a really key part of our business, because breaking news, Wayfair doesn't actually make anything. We are essentially a very pretty middleman that offers the customer some good deals, and a lot of our relationship is supplier focused. So we have assets and processes with our suppliers where they ingest, and we need to be able that we have a good safeguard about what they can ingest. We don't want our site to be overloaded with too many assets. We don't want our site to be overloaded with bad quality assets that are going to give the customer a bad experience. So the DAM, and when you think about metadata, all plays into essentially creating safeguards at each one of those steps. So we are not only storing them, we are using our processes within the DAM to double check all of our small parts lead to a good customer experience, which at the end of the day is key. Because these are assets that not just the website uses, but physical retail might use. Our catalogs, because we still have catalogs, might use some of these items. And then when you think about metadata, the tagging can't be manual in this amount of assets. If you manually try to tag 2.7 and growing assets, that's someone's next decade of life, and by then the data will be wrong and no longer accurate to our dictionary.
Right. We'll get to that. Hold that thought. Fabiana, so you mentioned to me that are you the first DAM employee? Is that right? And so if that's the case, what does governance look like in your world?
Chaos. I mean, before I was at LSC Library, so you can imagine the reality from coming from a library, an academic library, to a place where governance was not really looked properly, digital assets was not looked properly. So there is a old repository. There is some there is some order there. But there wasn't really, it was really ad hoc. It was developed ad hoc over the years and decades, quite honestly. And now we are looking at bringing to a new repository and creating. But what I see about metadata, bring to the previous discussions, and what I look forward to implement, and is that I think metadata in a repository, it records it records information that it captures information as different parts of the process of the assets, especially in a creative studio situation. So, we're talking about certain information that you have at the beginning, and then in the middle, then the rights, then the tagging that you come after, but that reflects what the images are related to. So in that case, I think the metadata will help us to bring the chaos together, if you see what I mean. Right. It's gonna map out this. I find like you have digital assets and you have the metadata. They're combined. They are the value that we need out of these assets. But the information in the metadata reflects the business, reflects the processes, reflects what comes next in the life.
Right. That's so true. And Patrick, from a vendor sort of standpoint, are you seeing this happening throughout all your customers, or anything else?
Well, and I think we're really, the topic of today's conversation is to discuss metadata and set importance. But when we're discussing a DAM as a platform, to take a few steps back and kind of like, why do we even care about a DAM, right? Like, why not just use Google Drive or Dropbox or Box or SharePoint, God help us?
I use one, Patrick. You don't want to go there.
Exactly. But I mean, that's kind of the point, though. These are easy systems to use. They're very easy to roll out to my end users. They're easy to provision from IT. And so, metadata is a very important part about a DAM and implementing a DAM because of all these different facets that Fabiana, Angela, and Santiago have brought up. Distribution. Once my content is organized well, I should be able to efficiently send that and connect that in with other systems. And that's kind of on the outbound side. On inbound, to that end, to Santiago's point, right? I don't want to manually have to categorize or move content explicitly where it should go. And a true DAM platform should help us on both like that incoming piece, organizing, gathering information, connecting with systems, ease of access, compliance, governance, like ability for these other teams to touch it, and then outbound, API connections, CDN, like delivering this content and allowing users to see it in a meaningful way too. So I think when we think about metadata, all of these topics are valid. Scale is tough. Categorization is tough. AI can help with some, but it's not super easy. But a DAM is meant to kind of, for that whole picture, let's let content work for us in more meaningful ways versus always having to be on top of it.
Yeah, so true. So I want to start a t-shirt business, and the first t-shirt that I'm going to make is going to say "Damn is a scam," right? Because the idea of sort of tagging, keying in metadata terms, right, against an asset so that you can search on that term and have that come back to you in a result is so 1982, right? Like, we're all here. It's 2023. We're almost at 2024. So let's dig into that a little bit. Like, so Santiago, you mentioned, I'll start here with you, but how do you balance the need for, for thorough metadata with the desire for sort of user friendliness and the idea of low burden on the end user, right? So like, not demanding too much of people to be tagging things, but how are you dealing with automating that process?
Yeah, when you think about the user experience, I like to start with the base idea of if you have a pile of clothes, yeah, everything's there, but you don't know what's in it. That's why we have closets. Welcome to the idea of a DAM. We need to be able to function in a platform that allows us to bring the most functionality to the dumbest person in our respective companies, because it is not their fault. They have other things they're really good at. Sometimes searching is not it. And that UI really comes key, where if you build in metadata rankings, that will allow you and your company to make it as functional as possible. So when you think about Wayfair, we have multiple brands. Some people might call it a console table, a side table, a TV table. But what the DAM can help us do is unify these terms to one centralized hierarchy of, hey, this is probably what we're looking at. We have a certain amount of confidence in our search results. Being able to bring that kind of mathematical strength into just everyday vocabulary increases the buy-in immediately from your teams.
Absolutely, absolutely. Angela, jumping to you, same question. How are you balancing the need for automation and
Oh my God.
yeah.
I say this because, like, I know it's this like buzzy topic right now, and I saw a business case from one of our internal digital solutions team that, has this like snazziness to it because there were some like auto tagging features, especially for content that, certain content in a market, it has business rules. It goes to a certain type of medical reviewer or legal reviewer because of the messaging or whatever is that. So essentially, it's this if this then that logic that we're trying to achieve. The problem, going back to, I'm looking at the chat and SharePoint, the problem is that those business rules then had to exist outside of our DAM, basically. And of course, I started to get a little like, what's really, does it have to? And for that purpose, it did, because our DAM wouldn't allow these kinds of business rules to be so quickly created. But the quickness meant that the sustainability of using this kind of like SharePoint library to host all of those rules meant that somebody had to be like living in those rules 24/7 all day long. The change management was too much of a lift that it became this kind of like lateral move. And we had to really ask ourselves, is the wound of auto-assigning really this big that we have to have this lateral solution? No, it's not. The issue is that our DAM is cluttered with irrelevant tags. We need to clean it up. We need a better focus on the UX. It's been 5 years since we evaluate it, too long. And another element to that is where, if we are going to rely on these kinds of business rules, how can we create them within our system? I don't want to take things out of our system. We're the single source of truth. We've paraded that for 5 years. We need to own that. So, I mean, maybe it's on us for not being proactive, but, I think the bigger issue is that I'm not willing to make a lateral move and take things out of my system, especially business rules in a global company with so many markets, so many things. I don't know if that answers your question, but I have feelings about it.
Yes, I see that.
Angela, on the clearing out of useless items, I think that's been a huge part of what I mentioned previously with our suppliers is suppliers will give you as many tags or as little tags as they feel like, and we did not have a process to control that.
Yeah.
And when you think about ingest from external sources, you can automatically templatize those. So the system knows if this company or this user is uploading something, give it these tags from the get-go. That way, they're not responsible for anything other than optional tags that may help us go through, but we know immediately supplier, category, things like that. And that's just for the home furnishing world. Other types of companies have those things that if you built those in early, you're automatically making like the strength of your platform much higher than if you just required them to put tags in, but didn't give them any sort of bumpers on it.
Yes, and that was the issue. I think that the push to get into our DAM, because it was time sensitive, we couldn't really take time to like start from scratch. We had to just push into this new space, migrate all of this work into a new space, and it really created this kind of like reactive like shock years later, just being like, wait, why are we still working this way? This sucks,
Well, and I think it brings us to an interesting point about AI in this context, though. I think AI it's a two-sided coin in this scenario. If I'm plugging a bunch of content through AI, am I going to expect or rely on 1 million assets worth of tags coming directly from keyword-based content? I don't know if that's necessarily the right approach. It sounds like it would actually probably be detrimental, Angela and Santiago, to your use cases with content. And so to that end, like building these controlled vocabularies in a way that is intuitive, but then using AI in smart ways, not just like, can I use ChatGPT to do this for me? Or can I just turn on flat auto tagging? But like natural language types of descriptions for content, or putting like trying to essentially meet those users closer to how they're finding content is, I think, the ultimate goal of the DAM. And to your point, it's always a headache, especially at large scales. And so thinking about ways to do that smarter, especially kind of from the initial point, I think that's a really interesting call out that if anybody's thinking about how to bolster their DAM, this is a huge piece of this. having your photographers capture more relevant metadata coming in, having your users that are uploading have more of these dictionaries or ways to categorize content that's standardized. It's so important, because then it's like that really crass expression, but crap in, crap out, right? If I'm bringing in crap into my dam, it's going to be hard to search through and wait for. So it's so important to think about the ingestion point. And so often, like even to Angela's point, it's time sensitive. I have to get it in there. It's a new platform. We're just moving everything to get it ready versus really pulling that thread and thinking about how, if we take the time on that initial load or even ongoing, how much time it can save us down the road.
I think Patrick owes $1 for being the first one to say AI in this. We almost waited 20 whole minutes.
You're going to lead me right down that path, but I just want to say, so it's really interesting what you said earlier. It's like, in the beginning with AI, it was all about how can I use AI just to create keywords to describe my assets, right? And again, so that's almost 1987. If what I said earlier was 1982, it's much more about describing the content in real human language types of ways, right? Like describing the emotion of that animal in that video shot, right? As opposed to tagging it that he's wearing a hat, or a blue hat, or, something as simple as that. We found the same thing at Showtime, because all of our content is based around shows or movies or the things we were marketing. And it really didn't matter to me to find all the pictures of guys with sunglasses on, right? Like, so it means nothing if it's not in the context of what you're actually searching for. So with that, Fabiana, coming to you, because we've got to keep moving. We've got a lot of ground to cover.
I know. So
talk to me. Wait, I'm going to give you a different question. We have to keep moving. So in what ways have you been leveraging AI or not for metadata creation? And are you using any sort of detection technologies? And how have the results been for you so far?
So we got a new dam with smart tags, but we turned it off. I know some people are going to cringe on this because it was creating too much unnecessary tagging. And then we felt that that was unproductive for us. And then to clean afterwards was too much. So we paused it. We are looking at the system. We're bringing in some taxonomy or creating some vocabulary control to reflect the business. So things that we can't really grab from anywhere else, is BA related. So it comes from a BA glossary, business glossary. So we are doing some initial vocabulary, creating a vocabulary control structure to then think again of how smart tags, or perhaps a smart search now that we heard today from PT, maybe we are PA, sorry, we are doing it. We are thinking of classifying everything, but actually the search can do for us in the future. So, but initially we turn it off and we are creating a vocabulary control.
Interesting. Okay. So, man, there's so much to cover, and we're going to run out of time to answer any of these great questions that we've already got coming in. Just really quick, a couple of quick hits, right? How do you, Santiago, how do you deal with street slang versus company slang for metadata terms? That's always a popular question in these things.
Yeah, so I just publicly shame people. No, I mean, as much as that is very tempting, we do have, obviously, with B2B, B2C, and so many cross-team partners, this idea of a dictionary that isn't so shared. So when we started really updating our dam the past 18 months, we had to put two different parallel path ideas together. One, knowledge updates. This is all about onboarding, giving ideally creative and helpful points where we can say, hey, by the way, this wasn't found by your team because it was tagged this way. Just giving them those times where not only are we helping them by making sure that we can point them to the assets they're looking for, but showing them and teaching them why they couldn't find it themselves. They had all the access needed to do so. On the other side, kind of goes back to what I was mentioning earlier, having algorithms and what I like to call practical AI on the back end help people bridge that gap themselves. So if you're looking for green, but it's tagged moss, the AI knows all the different hex colored numbers within the green family. So it can say, hey, you're saying green, and you're saying mid-century modern, we think you're talking about this imagery with moss. That's not tagged green, but it is within the green family, so it counts it within its search results.
Interesting. That's really interesting. Okay, who wants this one? How do you measure the return on return on investment in advanced metadata techniques or technologies? So implementing these AI strategies or tool sets or other automation in metadata tools that you might be implementing. How do you sort of measure the return on investment there? Is it user time? Is it dollars and cents? How does that work in your org? Angela?
I was about to say, I don't think I can answer this question because part of where I sit in the organization is to not look at savings. This our system is required. You cannot, like, there is no way around it. It is like I said earlier, the single source of truth. So it's not my responsibility to look at savings, but we are constantly talking about productivity. And if we are the single source of truth and we integrate to other systems, I mean, there's power there. And it's like Santiago, I think it said, like, you kind of have to shame people into their practices and their accuracy. And I think it's like the myth of Sisyphus, right? Like, every time you get that rock up that hill, guess what? It rolls back down, and you're back at the start. When one person goes missing, one thing goes wrong, one document's missing, I don't think that this ever really stops. So I'm not equipped to answer the question about savings. But hopefully I bought people time to get their answer in line.
I will say that obviously I think many of us have come to that conversation of, like, why are we spending this money? Wayfair has historically thought itself to be a tech company, and only within the past couple of years has gone third party for that resource. A big thing that we push is not only kind of to what Angela said of efficiency is profitability. We can point to a lot of soft costs that we're saving in terms of hours spent by those salaried employees. But as dams continue to grow, there's a lot of tools that will cut out other third-party necessities. Some dams have become that central creative hub, so you don't have to pay for a third-party things like Frame.io or things of that nature, because you can utilize that within the dam, since we're no longer within the old constraints. That's a cost savings. With Absolutely. All the speech to text and translations, you're doing a lot of cost savings with translation or caption companies that might be, depending on your type of company, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And each one of these things are hard costs that you can then bring back to saying, listen, our number hasn't changed here. This is the number that here, but all these other resources are now off our books.
Yeah. I totally agree with everything you both just said. I would just add also that don't be afraid to go old school. I mean, I think there's some real value just in, like, asking people to track their time when they're looking for stuff, right? Write it down on a piece of paper, collect all the papers, add it up. How many wall clock hours do people spend a week looking for assets that they're unable to find or whatever? You can really get basic with it and do some basic math, but of course you can do all of what you just said, because those other technology investments as a result are huge savings and have a big impact as well. Okay, so some questions from the crowd. We're moving quick. We're moving. So Fabiana, this came in for you. When you migrate legacy assets that may have originally been produced under an old set of standards, do you bother trying to bring those up to current standards at the same time as migrating them to the new system?
Yes and no. I think that we would say no for most of our content, because some of this old content are old in art direction, or the expired date is there. So if they are old, if the legacy is not to be obviously moved over, we're not going to bother with them. Some other requirements need, so we need to change the file formats or a ratio or things like that to work in the new system, but also that the new system is smart enough to change to add renditions. But what I'm finding is that the new system also has additional needs, that the renditions within the system. So the system is smart enough to add renditions, smart crops, dynamic media. So all of this helps a lot with the master, which the old system didn't. So I would say that we don't need to look so much into recreate assets. The system deals with that. Thank you.
Right. Oh, great. Okay, so Scott wrote in, our current DAM offers auto tagging, but it makes so many mistakes that we turned it off. So same as you, Fabiana. So that's 2 votes for that. Next question. Does it feel like there are 2 taxonomy levels, one for the end user, sort of non-experts, and one for administrative work in progress? This particular person is anonymous, but we're growing from our own, we're growing from only final products in the DAM to more of a work in progress for the creatives. This is making a one-size-fits-all taxonomy difficult. Santiago, I'll give that one to you.
Patrick, you want to take this one? I saw you go off mute.
Sure, I'm happy to. I mean, it's something that we run into all the time at the Brandfolder side. I'll just say that much. And what we tend to come to the realization with in a lot of these organizations is that you are entirely correct. There is a separate need for an internal or a work in progress or a creative taxonomy that more closely aligns with the stages, the approvals, the compliance steps that you have to go through. At something using a platform like Brandfolder for that, we heavily use that process internally ourselves. As a new feature comes out, as a new product, as a new offering, our team wants to get that info and distribute it. But only once we've approved it, we've gotten compliance and sign off that the final material, the distributable material is ready, then we move it out of work in progress into production. And that should be very simple. You should be able to automate that in your JAM solutions. But to that end, the idea is that we're moving it out of our internal taxonomy that helps us be efficient into that more straightforward or easy to digest format for those end users. So absolutely it's something that we recommend at our side and would love to hear, like Santiago, if you guys are doing something like that yourself.
Yeah, I can't stress this enough. Permissions. Make sure that when you take a look at your user types and user groups, you're setting permissions by use case. There are certain people that don't need to be adding specific data. They are just there to search and use, download, upload. That's it. There are other people that are more responsible and have better information and historical knowledge on more detailed metadata, and they should be responsible for those things. The uncomfortable part is the accountability on responsibility. Now, that really comes down to what the system lets you do without forcing you to do something. So what we're building into ours is, hey, like I mentioned before, you're uploading this asset. You can't hit upload until you give me these 3 things. You can't download this asset unless we know, one, hey, where is this going to? Who is it by? And then it's going to force you to do it with a watermark unless it's one of 3 approved use cases. So, Angela, I know that comes down to all your world. And then a big thing for us is building in, because we are in advertising, a lot of talent rights, music rights, all that kind of information. If it's out of its right dates, you can't touch it. You can't download it. You can't share it, nothing. And that's all the kind of data that the system makes people responsible for when they drop it in from the beginning.
Interesting. That's great. Okay, next question from Jacqueline. Do you take file naming into consideration for your assets? SEO considerations in DAM ? We have to think about the end user downloads from web pages. So are there any automated solutions for, I guess, file naming is what she means here that you guys use?
I answered this question in the chat because I was really eager to, first of all, SEO aside, because I don't really know that kind of world. I will say we do have file naming conventions that we use because, and again, this, unfortunately, some fields are controlled, meaning that they're single select, multi-select, whatever. Other fields are not. So having this kind of if we have to dump text into the space, having a standard hierarchy to the way that file is named helps feed those integrations throughout our, other relevant systems. Anyway, I wanted to say that you can have all of the creative, cool naming style that make the most sense to you. It doesn't matter. because the lift of adoption will always be hard. Again, when you put people in this like space that they're responsible to do a thing, you're rolling the dice in terms of like, what is that person's level of commitment? And do they understand that there is implication if they get it wrong or if they just don't do it? Like, you know, and we have some marketers that totally fully embrace it because they understand what happens if they fail to do this. And then there are others that don't even know that this practice exists. And I think that is just, I don't even know what to make of that. That analogy alone, I feel like represents the world. There's this huge, you know, dichotomy of like people who are committed to something and doing it right, and then others who are like, I'm going with the principle of least effort here, and anything in between doesn't matter.
I just want to add a quick aside to that, because that's an important point, Angela. Just because you're operating off the principle of least effort does not mean that that shouldn't be a part of your solution either. Just as a quick aside on that.
Agreed.
I just want to support Angela that we are using the advice from CEO to start our name conventions. The previous name convention was to do with the day-to-day, what was the product about, lots of acronyms in the name, which doesn't help at all our CEO. And also because the name of the file will end up in the website. So we are embracing CEO, but I totally get what Angela is saying about adoption. It's really hard. It's the hardest thing. You need to get people to adopt it, and it's hard. But we're trying our best.
It's especially hard to get creatives to name files correctly, right? Or ask them to do any metadata entry, right? And so at Showtime, we gave up on that. I mean, the name of the file is still really important for those parts of your workflow where that file leaves the DAM, right? Like where it's sitting on a drive somewhere and somebody needs to know what it is without having to open it necessarily, especially when there are thousands of files potentially in that folder. And so that was critical for some of our promo delivery teams to really have a code or some kind of human readable thing. Didn't have to be described with like, you know, elegant language, but it could even just be a serial number that they could decipher. But we took out all of the manual naming, created automation around that. So as long as the creative person put the file in a certain place, then that file would automatically go out to the job systems, the project management system, the program scheduling system, whatever it might be, and pull the relevant metadata based on where that file was sitting and attach it and embed it into the XMP so that the DAM would see that automatically. So even though we'd be better off, to all of your points, we'd be better off if we could get them to actually do it. We just had to essentially give up on it at some point, and for the greater good of actually having a usable DAM. Okay, one more minute. What is the top of your list for a feature from any DAM provider that might be listening right now with regards to metadata? Is there something that you wish they would build for you? Fabiana?
A public shaming tool.
This search, I actually would like this AI search because I really like the idea. People can request an image and the system bring what we have. That would be amazing.
Paul, I think
you're muted, Paul.
Right now? Sorry.
Nope, Paul just lost his audio.
Sorry, am I back?
So,
yeah.
There we go. Yeah, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, thank you so much to this amazing panel. If anybody has any questions for them, connect with them on LinkedIn. I'm sure that they would accept your friend request. Great panel. Stick around for the rest of the sessions and the rest of the day, and I hope to see everybody out in LA for the next Henry Stewart event on the 17th.
Thanks, everybody.
See you guys.
Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.